One game, 2 hours. Hook me. Kingdoms of Amalur. Re-Reckoning. So it's finally here. The somewhat highly anticipated remaster of Kingdoms of Amalur. And that's also the first big thing that we have to keep in mind. This isn't a remake, this is a remaster. And this remaster is being published by THQ Nordic and was developed by Big Huge Games, who of course also worked on the original Kingdoms of Amalur, as well as KAIKO, the studio that for example worked on the War Mastered edition of Darksiders. And to cut this video short for the people that already played the original, there aren't really a lot of reasons to get the remastered edition. There's some adjustments that have been made that I'll get into a little later, but overall, it's really not that different from the original. I don't know what I expected since it's a remaster, but it feels kind of lacking. I think they could have done more in a lot of areas. But let's get into the nitty and gritty of it.
He had power like none we had ever seen. Terrible and deadly.
So in good old RPG fashion, you start out by creating your character. And the character creation is decent, though it's certainly nothing to brag about. You get to choose whether you want to play a male or a female characters, and you get to choose between 4 slightly different races, and there's a fair amount of hairstyles, faces, etc. to choose from, but again, it's certainly not overwhelming. But what Re-Reckoning lacks in terms of visual customization, much like the original, it makes up for it in actual character development. Because there are a lot of ways to shape a character exactly to your liking. For one, when you level up, you will be able to upgrade a skill, such as blacksmithing, lockpicking, or stealth. And upgrading a skill doesn't always just give a percentual increase, but every so often there will also be certain milestones that enhance the ability in a special way. So that makes all skills a little bit more interesting. And after upgrading a skill, you will also be able to upgrade your abilities. Now these are split up into 3 different trees, Might, Finesse and Sorcery, which for all intents and purposes are basically Warrior, Rogue and Mage, but much like the original there isn't really a fixed class, so you can spend your ability points however you see fit. And the abilities that you are able to unlock cover a fairly wide spectrum. On the one hand, there's simple passives that for example give you an increase in damage with a certain weapon type. On the other hand, you also have skills that will unlock certain combo options for your basic attack. And then again, you also have spells that for example will summon a bunch of spikes out of the ground that stun your enemies, or will rain a meteor shower down on them. So from simple passives to wicked spells, everything is covered. And how you choose to spend your points in these 3 trees will also affect the destinies you'll later be able to pick. Destinies are yet again another way to improve your character that will usually give you passive increases in certain areas. For example, there are destinies that are entirely focused on one tree, like Brawler, that will give you a melee attack damage increase and a higher block efficiency. But there are also destinies that mix trees together and will give you increases in very different areas. So whether you want to play a balls to the walls berserker, a spell-slinging rogue, or some kind of war mage, the choice is yours. You're not locked into anything. And if you're not happy with the way you skilled your character, you can always reset your skill points in exchange for a small fee. And this class fluidity and the many ways in which you can improve your character is where Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning really shines in my opinion. Because aside from skills, abilities and destinies, there are for example also lore stones scattered around the world. And finding and activating these stones will give your character yet more, usually passive, upgrades like increased health, more damage with Fey Blades, stuff like that. And of course there's also a ton of loot. So you can also always focus on farming better gear, or finding matching set pieces, because of course, set pieces will give you a set bonus that increases your character's strength further. But enough about improving your character, let's see what we can do with it. Combat. Now, much like the original Kingdoms of Amalur, the combat in Re-Reckoning is great. It really is one of the strongest points of the game. For one, you have a wide variety of different weapons, like longswords, blades, daggers, staffs, and so on. And with any given weapon, you will always have various methods of attack. So you will have your standard button mash combo, but there's also a charged attack, there's a delayed combo. You can always use a spell mid combo or use it to string combos together. And that makes the combat feel very dynamic and also fluid. Aside from that, you can also always switch to a ranged weapon. And of course, you can also just dodge out of the way or block an incoming attack. And if you hit a dodge or a block perfectly, it will also slow time down shortly and stagger all enemies. So overall, you have a wide variety of melee combo options, you have ranged weapons, you have spells that you can use to string combos together, and you also have blocking and perfect blocking, as well as dodging and perfect dodging. And as I said, the combat feels very dynamic and fluid. It's fun. There's nothing more to say about it. The combat's great. What isn't so great though, at least in my opinion, is the story and the quests. The quests are super generic. Go into this dungeon and retrieve my journal. Talk to this person over there. Go to that place and kill 5 bears. And the story yet again has not managed to intrigue me. I've heard some people say the story's highly underrated. Maybe it is. It definitely isn't in my opinion. The writing isn't particularly great, and it's not really all that special. You're the chosen one, basically, the great fate weaver who can decide his own fate. I've lost track of the story very early on in the original, and I'm about to in this one as well. To be honest, I've always seen Kingdoms of Amalur as more of a single-player MMO than anything else. You come into a new town and there's a bunch of exclamation marks, you go through the boring dialogue, accept all the quests, and then you venture out into the world and bring them their 5 bear pelts or whatever. The good thing is, if this experience is what you're looking for, this striving to just create a powerful character and dominate everything in this world without caring much about the story, then Kingdoms of Amalur is perfect. So combat 10 out of 10, story 0 out of 10, let's move on. Of course, I'm only joking. Kind of. But let's check out what the remaster does differently than the original, to find out if it's worth getting this one too. So there's 3 or maybe 4 things that I'd like to touch on. Now, believe it or not, the graphics have improved. Though, as you can probably tell, not by a lot. This does not look like a game that came out in 2020. Let's be real here. It's not the end of the world because it has a very stylized graphic style. But honestly, from the remaster, I expected more. And additionally, in some areas I experienced frame drops, which are definitely not related to my PC. Believe me, my PC can handle this game just fine, it's just not that well optimized. I've also found reports of frame drops on reviews that are already on Steam and on the internet in general. So this isn't an isolated incident. The load times are still too long. I feel like that is an area that could have been and should have been tackled for the remaster. And yeah, it looks slightly better, but really not that much. But who cares about graphics anyways, am I right? Because there are 2 changes that are somewhat major and that make a great impact on the game. For one, the leveling system has been adjusted. So in the original, when you entered a new area, the enemy levels would be calculated in accordance to your current level. Now there was a min and max level for that area, but within that range it got calculated as soon as you first entered it, and then it never got recalculated. That led to you being pretty overpowered in a lot of areas very soon. And that is different in Re-Reckoning. In Re-Reckoning, what will happen is a certain area will still have a minimum and a maximum level, but it will be recalculated when you enter it. That means you will have challenging enemies for longer in any given area. But since there is a min and max level, there's still gonna be enemies that you just can't take on early in the game, and later on you'll still be able to go back and crush them beneath your heel. So you can still live out your power fantasy, you just don't get bored so early. And additionally, a very hard difficulty has been added, which I very much appreciate. The second big change that has been done is in regards to the loot system, because now the loot will be generated as soon as you open a chest. And it will be generated factoring your character's abilities in more. so you're more likely to get equipment that fits your level and the way you skilled your character. These are the two changes that have a big impact and that are basically the sole reason you should consider getting the remaster. And the final major adjustment that has been made is that there are now a wider variety of camera options. Because in the original, the camera would often be too close to your character, or it would be positioned in a spot that made it unable for you to see enemies during combat. So being able to adjust that to your personal liking is a welcome change. And additionally, all DLC is of course already included in the remastered version. And so the question at hand now is, did it hook me? Now I actually really like the original Kingdoms of Amalur, but this one didn't hook me. Why? Well, because I've already played it and there aren't a lot of big changes here. I know, it's a remaster, we shouldn't expect anything too great, but there are certain things, especially in regards to the optimization, that I feel like they should have put a bigger focus on. But of course that doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't recommend it. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the pricing. Because Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning will set you back €39.99 if you're in Europe, or $39.99 if you're in the US. Of course, as always, your prices may vary depending on your exact location. However, if you already own the original Kingdoms of Amalur, you will get a 50% discount on Steam for the next 2 months. So in that case, it would only set you back $20 or euros respectively. And if you want to dive into the world of Kingdoms of Amalur again, then Re-Reckoning is probably the way to go. And if you're looking for an MMO-like experience but like me hate people or just don't have that much time, then it's also a great choice. At least if you can get it with the discount or on sale. I do think $40 is a little steep considering you do definitely feel its age, despite it just having been released again. But if you're looking for an RPG with a strong narrative that you can really immerse yourself in, then I don't know if I would go with this one. It's certainly no Witcher 3 or Dragon Age. So all in all, it's the same again, but slightly better. Who would have thought? At any rate, that's it for this video and Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. If you enjoyed it, please consider checking out other parts in the series and leave a like. And if you didn't, feel free to leave a dislike, but still check out other videos in the series because hey, maybe you'll like those. And as always, this is Evolutionz signing out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Well, that's it for you then. Better luck next time.